As long as I was going after the crooks that didn't have badges, I was everybody's hero.
Is the tape rolling?
Tape is, in fact, rolling.
Hi, Jonathan.
Good to see you, man.
Good to be
We
back.
are Monday morning post Netflix weekend.
Yes, we are. You and
Wow.
I both took Friday off and went to my house, and we binged watched all 5 episodes.
With a barbecue break in
a
between.
barbecue break from Hellberg's Barbecue, voted one of the
So
best in Texas. Yeah, we picked up a big box of it and brought it to the house. We had a small group at the house and watched all 5 episodes. I was tired before it was over.
Before it was over?
I was tired.
You were worn out?
Yeah, well, you know, it was an emotional ride for me.
I understand.
It really was. It wasn't like just watching a documentary. It was reliving some of it.
Yeah.
So, because I lived through this whole thing.
What was honestly though? What was that like, Vic? Because I was right next to you, and you were really engaged with
I was
it.
engaged.
We only stopped a couple times to comment, or the Rangers would say something. We'd kind of look at each other and do a little like,
Yeah, I'd do the Boutwell quote. That's a damn lie.
That's a damn lie.
That's a damn lie.
But how did it feel, Vic, to finally see this thing come to fruition?
Vindicated.
All right.
That's the best word I can come up with. Vindicated. I totally felt vindicated. I got something on Facebook last night from someone who said, wow, when I grew up in my household, my family, the name Vic Feazell was also always associated with bribery and a crook.
Wow.
Now I know better. Vindicated.
Wow.
That's how I feel. And
But
I hope more people feel that and can see what really happened.
Yeah.
Because this was a powerful, powerful group of people led by Colonel Jim Adams,
Yeah.
head of the DPS, former deputy director of the FBI. We had our grand jury going, and I'm telling you, my personal belief is that if the plug had not been pulled on our grand jury, that Jim Boutwell might have been indicted.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, and it said in the documentary too, and you and I have talked about it, obviously. But that's where you guys were headed.
That's where we were headed.
The findings of
Yeah. I can't talk about grand jury deliberations or what went on. I'm going to just talk about my personal feeling. But
Right.
my personal feeling is that Jim Boutwell probably would have been indicted and perhaps Bob Prince.
Yeah. Which we saw a lot of in the documentary.
We saw a lot of Bob Prince. He's still sticking to the party line, even though he's the guy who talked Henry Lucas into confessing up in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And letting Scotty Scott, a convicted murderer, go free just because he was the son of a state trooper.
Isn't that wild?
I mean, Henry told us and told me and Maddox all about how Prince just leaned on him about how, well, we don't think this boy did it, and he's been found guilty, and if you just confess to this, it would be so good.
Yeah.
And he got out, and Chris Piazza was on the documentary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris Piazza came to our grand jury. He was the DA that handled that case.
Yeah.
And now Chris Piazza is a federal judge.
Oh, wow.
Federal judges don't give interviews. So this must still be really important to Chris Piazza.
Yeah,
because
he
saw,
seemed emotional about it.
He did. He saw a murderer walk free. Now, I know from talking to Robert Kenner with Kenner Films that did this for Netflix, that the structure for that interview was very narrow. They had to give him the questions first, and that's all they could ask because he's a federal judge, and federal judges just don't do that. And he probably had to get, some consent from higher up the chain. I don't know. But he did a good job and pointing out the Scotty Scott case and that a murderer was actually let out of prison.
It's crazy.
Now, I got to finish the story, though. Scotty Scott was later retried.
Right.
He was given a new trial because of Henry, later retried, and he got off. He got off because they were able to say, well, no, this guy Henry Lucas did it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of sad there. And also Bobby Prince was involved in that policeman's suicide.
Right.
Yeah.
Where Henry took it so the wife could get the life insurance, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And so those are just, wow, man. Talk about obstruction of justice, perjury, everything
I'm kind of
else.
surprised they didn't put that one in the life insurance case.
Well, there's a lot they didn't put in.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, I got to say, I was really pleased with the docuseries.
Yeah,
I love Robert Kenner, and he is a master.
it's
He
true.
is a master of making documentaries. Now, one thing they did leave out,
What's that?
gee, I wish they'd have put this in because I've already gotten 20 emails
Is this
at
about
least.
the money?
The money.
Yeah. Oh, please.
The
please.
money. I mean, I even got an email from a man in Europe. He says, "I'm going through a real desperate time. Please just wire me 22,000 euro.
Yeah.
No questions asked. Just send it to me. I know you can afford it, and you seem like a really nice guy."
Yeah.
And I've had probably 20 requests for loans through Facebook and my email.
Isn't that crazy?
And folks, the rest of the story and what I wish Netflix would have put in was that 5 years after, and we settled that case just before the appeal. We didn't
Right.
get the 58 million. We settled it for about almost 16 million.
Right.
And Gary Richardson, my lawyer, and I, we split that right down the middle. Because I had done a lot of work on the case too, and also because Gary had defended me on my criminal case without even charging me.
Wow.
He even paid his own expenses.
What a guy.
I was just a broke little DA. They were claiming I was taking all these bribes and everything.
Yeah.
I didn't have any money.
Where's the money at? Come on, where's it at?
And then the feds got a change of venue after I was reelected and
Right.
moved the case to Austin.
Right. So you had to commute and all that.
Yeah, so that even cost us more money. And I'm telling you, Gary had a friend in Austin who owned a apartment complex on a really seedy side of town, which is now a good side of town.
Oh, yeah.
Because Austin has changed so
Oh,
much.
yeah. Yeah, it's different.
And Gary even arranged for the apartment that my wife and I stayed in during the trial
Man, what a guy.
at no cost. Yeah,
I really liked seeing him in the documentary, by the way.
I did
He was
too.
funny, man. He was really funny, his parts.
well, I'm going to talk about Gary in just a minute, but yeah, Gary stayed in that apartment too for like the first week.
Yeah.
And he decided, this is too seedy for me. I'm going to the hotel.
He didn't like the roaches.
He didn't. And so he went to a hotel and paid his own way. But 5 years after we got the money,
Yeah.
the Internal Revenue Service changed the tax code
Oh, yeah.
and made it retroactive just to grab me. Just to grab me. That was a...
They were going to get you one way or another, weren't they?
They were. They were calling that the Vic Feazell tax change. They started taxing libel verdicts. They made it retroactive. And by then, Jonathan, see, I had all this money. And plus, the guy in Europe is right. I do have a good heart.
That's true.
And I was buying cars for people like I was Elvis. I bought a house and gave it to the diocese in Austin for a homeless shelter. I kept a stack of $100 bills in my car, and anytime I saw anybody who looked like they were in need,
Yeah.
I'd give them
You're
one.
just making it rain out there.
I remember I was driving to Austin once, and I saw a car on the side of the road that was abandoned, and then about a mile down the road, a young black man walking with a gas can. And I was like, oh, that's his car. I pulled over, I picked him up, I drove him to the gas station, I gave him the $100 bill. He was so appreciative. I didn't even tell him what my name was.
That's awesome.
I remember one Christmas Eve, I went into a gas station in Austin. There was a young couple I saw at the pump in front of me, and they were digging through the seats and everywhere, counting their quarters and pennies.
Oh, my Lord.
To try to put a little gas in the car on a Christmas Eve. So I gave them some of that stack of hundreds.
There you go.
That Mercedes I was driving back then had a little secret compartment under the seat. It was hard to find.
Was that some kind of custom thing you had put in, or?
It was custom, but I didn't have it put in. You had to special order it. Yeah.
Cool.
And so I kept a stack of hundreds in there. And something else I won't mention because it wasn't legal back then. But, well, yeah, I carried a gun just in case.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
just in case because I had a target on me.
Well, I was going to say, frankly, I mean,
I had a target on me.
I think everybody who watched the documentary would agree.
Yeah,
you
and
should be
it was
packing.
some. I was concerned. Yeah, watch the documentary. You'll understand why I had a target on them. But they made it retroactive, and wow, they took away nearly everything I had.
Yeah.
Now I fought it.
Right.
We filed a petition in the U.S. tax court challenging that law, and I won.
Oh.
There are 12 judges on the U.S. tax court.
Right.
I won 11-1.
That's amazing.
I know.
Landslide.
And then the government appealed it to the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans, the most conservative circuit in the United States. Wow. And there I lost 2-1.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
And I guarantee you there are people down there on that court at that time that they were either friends with Colonel Jim Adams or
Possibly.
connected with Below or something. Because in the United States, you're not supposed to have a retroactive law. It's called ex post facto.
Right.
It's unconstitutional. I hired a really good lawyer from Dallas, a guy named Rogie Dunn.
Is it Rogie?
Rogie. And he was good, man. And when we lost at the at the Fifth Circuit, we appealed it to the Supreme Court of the United States.
Okay.
And at the Supreme Court of the United States, I lacked one vote having them take it up.
Actually review it. Yeah. Man, that's terrible.
We even quoted Oliver Wendell Holmes.
Okay.
One of the greatest jurists who ever lived. And one of his famous quotes is, "The power to tax is the power to destroy."
Yeah.
Now, if it's a power to destroy, why can they make it retroactive?
Yeah, really?
That is an unconstitutional ex post facto law. Congress should look at that, change it right now, and give me back my money with interest.
There you go.
No kidding. They screwed me on that,
Can they
Jonathan.
do that?
Congress can do whatever they want to that way.
Ooh.
Yeah, they could pass a law to say, hey, that's not fair what happened to Vic Feazell. We're giving him back his money. And I'll say to Congress, hey, forget the interest. Just give me my money. But the interest would be nice.
It'd be great.
Because they deprived me of that money all these years. And not only deprived me of that money, but all the people I was handing those $100 bills to that I had to stop.
Yeah, man.
And all the charities I
Circle
supported.
of life stopped.
Did it ever. So I wish that Netflix would have put that in there, because now everybody thinks I'm sitting on $58 million, and I'm not.
I know it.
You know, I wouldn't be practicing law if I had that much money. You and I would just be doing this podcast.
Just hanging out on an island somewhere, private island.
I'm still hoping this podcast gets enough listeners, and man, we're growing.
We're growing exponentially. Thanks to Netflix.
Exponentially.
And some great press has come out, like the great article about you in Esquire magazine.
Esquire, that was good. And the one in Oxygen.
Yes.
Oxygen was real good. It was what? Who is Vic Feazell?
Who is Vic Feazell?
Something like that.
Well, let me ask you real quick though, Vic. Just getting back to that whole making it retroactive. What was their reasoning for that? Because we know personal injury settlements are not taxable.
Right.
We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a personal injury.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, libel
what
is considered personal injury.
So what was their rationale? What was their reasoning?
To get me.
We don't like you.
To get me. They said, no, we're going to say this isn't personal injury because you haven't had any broken bones and you didn't bleed. Well, for 200 years of American history, that had been considered personal injury.
Yeah.
And they changed it for me. The word I was getting is that the people around Jim Adams and around the Rangers were saying, well, he may have gotten off the hook. We can't send him to prison, but we're not going to let him keep that money. Wow. So, and that's what they did. And so I'm practicing law, but I've been able to help people.
Yeah.
And I'm helping people through our law practice now. The law offices of Vic Feazell.
Yes.
Give us a call. We'll help you. If you've been injured in a car wreck, if you've been hit by an 18-wheeler, we're your law firm. We do some criminal defense, too. You know, another thing they left out, I'm going to have to go to the courthouse this week and apologize to Judge Matt Johnson.
Oh, for what?
Netflix sent me to talk to him because they wanted some film of me in a courtroom.
Sure.
So he agreed to let Netflix film in his courtroom through the window, kind of like they do for murder trials and stuff like that. And they filmed Judge Johnson sitting at his bench.
Cool.
And last time I was in L.A., they showed me that piece that was going to be in the documentary.
Uh-huh.
And it pans by, and there's Judge Johnson for at least maybe 4 or 5 seconds.
Nice.
You know?
Little
Very
cameo.
nice. Good little cameo.
Yeah.
And when I saw Judge Johnson the next time, I said, hey, I just got back from L.A., and guess what? You're in the documentary.
You're in it. But they cut it.
They cut him.
Oh no.
We're sitting there watching it, and I go, wait a minute. Where's Judge Johnson?
I actually remember you saying that because that was the scene where they were looking at you through the window and you're sitting there with your documents and so that was the same scene.
Yeah, but they also had a camera at the other door shooting up the aisle, showing my back and showing him sitting on the bench. And he actually called me to the table and had me stand up at the table. It was a sweet gesture just so they could get that few
That is really
seconds
sweet.
of film. And Judge Johnson, I am sorry they cut you from that. I'm sure you probably don't care, but I feel like I feel like I didn't keep my word to you, but it wasn't my fault. They just totally.
Well, and unfortunately, man, that's just the process of
That's
editing.
a process of editing, because I also got a call from my lawyer and my good friend Gary
Oh,
Richardson
Gary.
yesterday.
Which his parts were great though. He had a couple lines, and I love the one about when he did a little motion with the handcuff thing. Where, you know how the feds didn't like that.
Yeah,
That was funny.
Gary's great.
You know what's funny though is my girlfriend, when she watches, she's like, "I love that man." He's just so personable. Gary is.
It's hard not to love Gary unless he has sued you.
Oh, jeez.
Now, Gary has a lot of enemies like I do, and they're mostly people he has sued and kicked their butts, or just, for whatever reason,
Fair enough.
but not because of anything he's ever done personally. It's professional. And Gary's a good guy, but they had Gary drove all the way from Tulsa to Austin. That's
Right.
a long drive.
Yeah, that's a haul.
And they interviewed him in my office in Austin for nearly what? You were there.
Just hours and hours. and
Hours.
and
At least, I
hours.
think maybe 7 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, the building was closing by the time they got out of there. And remember, they brought in that, what do you call that track?
The little shooting dolly thing.
Yeah, the dolly. Yeah. And had that dolly, and they got all these special shots of him, and had him walk into his car. And Gary's had a lot of really good stories. And it ended up he had like maybe 3 lines.
Yeah.
And so, and Gary is just fabulous. He's a lawyer in Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you ever need a good lawyer in Tulsa, call Gary Richardson. Gary's the dude, man.
Yeah.
Gary's the dude.
Yeah.
And Gary taught me so much of what I know about cross-examination and final argument and how to put a case together. He calls it jury empowerment. He doesn't try to cram it down their throat. He lets them connect the dots.
Yeah.
And he's very good at it. But I love Gary, and I wish they'd have given Gary a little more time. Lynn Woolley.
Lynn Woolley.
Lynn Woolley. We've had Lynn on our show.
You pointed them out to me. There was actually a still frame of you, and Lynn was in the background of it.
He was. There was a black and white photo with Skinny Lynn.
Skinny
from the
Lynn.
1980s, man.
Yeah.
And everybody in that documentary, except for me, you look at them, they went from skinny to heavy. I went from heavy to skinny.
That's true.
That's a good commercial for yoga.
There you go.
We've got some great yoga studios right here in Waco, Texas.
Yes.
And some good ones in Austin. I started out in Austin.
The one that I almost passed out at.
The one you did pass out in.
I almost passed out.
Yeah, you look like a beached seal. You really did.
Appreciate you.
You just gave up and laid on the floor.
I didn't give up. I didn't give up. I was dying. That's really messed
I
up.
didn't think that much sweat could come out of anybody as little as you.
Yeah, man, there's cheeseburgers popping out and chicken wings, all sorts of terrible things I've consumed.
They interviewed Lynn Woolley for 6 hours.
Oh, yeah.
They went to Temple to his radio station. They had him take live calls. Hey, do you guys remember Henry Lee Lucas? What do you think? Did he commit those murders or not?
Yeah.
And people were calling in and talking about it.
That's amazing.
Amazing. A lot of good stuff, and all that was cut. Lynn Woolley, if you're listening, man, we appreciate you. I'm going to be down there in Temple pretty soon to be on Lynn's podcast.
Yes.
Because he was on ours, and so he wants me to come down and be on his, and I'm going to do that. 'Cause
Excellent.
even, like I say every time, I don't agree with anything Lynn says, but I love him.
Yeah.
I love him. Lynn helps.
Podcast is Planet Logic.
Planet
Everybody wants to
Logic.
Listen to it.
He's very, very, very conservative, but he helps balance the boat
Yeah.
from those who are very, 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 very liberal. And that's the good thing about our country is that everybody can have a voice. And we balance each other out, and that's what the polls are for. That's what elections are for. And when you go vote, remember my friend Matt Johnson, because he's either going to be running for re-election or running for the Court of Appeals. Yeah. And Matt Johnson, I appreciate what you did letting us film in your courtroom. And also Judge Scott Felton. Okay. He's the county judge of McLennan County. And McLennan County has one of the most beautiful courthouses you will ever see.
Yeah, someone made it to the documentary. Gorgeous, beautiful, white, just.
Oh, remember I was complaining about him making me walk up those steps? Yeah. Well, Robert Kenner, you're not going to have to buy me that $50 glass of wine.
There you go.
Because it did show me walking up those steep steps.
It did. The stairs got some good footage.
They did.
It's hilarious.
It's a beautiful courthouse, and our county judge and our county commissioners keep it maintained at its historical level. I mean, it's a historical courthouse, and they keep it historical,
including the fallout shelter sign.
Yeah, everything. I mean, I love those guys for taking care of that beautiful building the way they do. So thank you, Judge Scott Felton, for letting us film in the courthouse, and thank you, Judge Matt Johnson, for letting us film in your courtroom.
Love it.
So we love you guys, and thank you for taking care of our beautiful courthouse. We've been getting so much email, Facebook, and this podcast has just gone through the roof in the last few days.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Well, I mean, there's no more need to be said. I mean, we have just tons and tons and tons of new listeners, which is awesome. And again, what you said, the feedback is just amazing.
It's been amazing.
It's really nice to hear that, people have gone from the documentary, now they're getting into the podcast, and they're looking at these cases more in depth. And a lot of the footage that Netflix didn't use of our archives is in our podcast. So if you want more depth, you want to hear more Henry talk, and you want to hear more Henry confessions, let's just do our podcast. It's all there.
Yeah.
Listen to this.
And we've got the video. All that Japanese video that you saw on Netflix, they got that from us. Hugh Ainsworth helped arrange it.
Yes.
But it was going to be thrown away. Hugh didn't have any use for it. I think it was his daughter maybe that had
picked it up from his daughter's garage.
And you drove and picked it up from her garage where it had been in storage for 20 years,
get the dust
30
off
years.
The box.
Yeah.
Get the dust off.
And we took it and had it reformatted brought it up to present standards.
Yeah, to digital.
And then Netflix worked on it some more to make it even better.
Yeah.
And so some fabulous Japanese footage there. And we're going to be placing some of that on our website, vicfeazell.com.
Correct.
You notice I've learned to quit saying www.
Yeah, I think it was Bob Dole.
Bob Dole, www.bobdole.com.
Blah.
Yeah, I loved Bob Dole too. He was a war hero, a good man, had a good heart. See, I love him on both sides. I thought one of the funniest things, though, was when the guy who prosecuted me, Jack Frails, said, well, it was his personality that won it. I mean, he was Bill Clinton before there was Bill Clinton.
I like that. One of my other favorites is Bobby Prince when he was on there. He said the most dangerous place was between you and a TV camera. That's funny, man.
That was funny. It's probably the only true thing he said.
But what was wild is to hear what their defense was to you. And that was that you were trying to give the Rangers a black eye, that you had an axe to grind, is what Phil Ryan said, which after seeing Phil Ryan, I don't know, man.
I know. I mean, I've been talking nice about Phil Ryan. I've had kind of warm fuzzies about Phil Ryan. But I don't know now after seeing him on Netflix. However...
But it's all context, too, and Lord
knows
context. How much they taped and what they put in to create the tension.
It's context and no telling what they left out that he said.
Yeah.
And so I'm still giving Phil Ryan the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to throw him in there with Prince and Bow. Not just yet. And I do hope someday he and I get a chance to just sit down and talk and be nice and civil with each other.
Yeah.
He carries a gun. That kind of scares me. But
oh, come on.
No, I'm teasing.
You ain't afraid enough of Mr. Feazell.
I know that.
Don't tell me twice.
I was just born that way. I can't help it. So, I got this really sweet email from a lady in Georgia. I'm not going to say her last name because I don't have her permission, but she's from Georgia. Not Georgia by Russia, Georgia down by Mississippi. Although I think we have listeners in Russia now. Last time you looked.
Yeah, we do.
And
some real weird Eastern European areas.
Yeah, we do. And a whole lot in Japan. Our Japan numbers are going through the roof.
Numbers.
I know. Thank you, Japan, for listening to our podcast. Hello, Japan. We love you.
Lord.
Yeah, even though, it aired the day before Pearl Harbor Day.
December 7th.
That's in the past. I believe in letting the past be the past.
Yeah, that's done with.
And forgiving each other and moving forward. But I got this really sweet email from a lady. Her first name is Tamiko or Tamiko. I looked her up. She's a real attractive young lady. I think she's an actress.
Cool.
Speaking of, I really wish they'd do a movie about this.
You deserve a movie deal.
This deserves a theatrical movie.
Do you know what's funny, Vic? Is a lot of people said that. I've been looking at a lot of the comments on articles, and a lot of people are like, where's this guy's movie deal? How come no one's done a movie out of you?
I know.
It's so weird.
Well, we're going out to California in January to give a speech in Laguna.
You're giving a speech.
Well, you're going to be there to help me in case I forget a name or something. You're going to be videotaping.
Give me some signals from the back.
Signals from the back. Yeah. Now, you're there to keep me out of trouble. But Jules Zallen is the man who set that speech up.
Right.
Jules is an attorney. He used to be in New York City. One of my favorite memories of Jules, he took me to the World Trade Center the first time I ever went there, yes. Ooh. And we had dinner one night. I think it's called the Windows of the World or something like that.
Right at the top.
Right at the top. So beautiful. We had a window overlooking the Statue of Liberty. We ate dinner up there and watched the helicopters fly around the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
It was so wonderful. Jules Allen is an attorney, and he was Willie Nelson's attorney for all of his merchandising.
Oh, wow.
See, and me and Willie, we knew each other. I was on the stage with Willie at his 1987
his big picnic
at Carl's Corners. Yeah. He introduced me from the stage. I even had lunch with him in his bus.
That's cool.
It was great. But Jules Zallen set this up. And at one time, Jules was doing some movie producing background work.
Sure.
And actually had a company buy the rights to my movie.
To your life story kind of thing? That's awesome.
It was just a little deposit kind of thing. I think it was $5,000 or something like that.
Throw that life on hold.
Yeah, and it was on hold for a couple years, and then it expired. They never did anything with it. And then later, my friend out in California, Marty Croft, was going to get HBO to do a movie about this, and it sort of fell through too. But yeah, this deserves a movie.
Yeah,
and when this happened, I was a lot younger then than I am now. If you see me on TV, I'm that skinny old white-haired guy. But I really think they ought to go talk to Zac Efron.
Oh, there you go. That's who you choose this time, is Zac Efron. Back in the day, you chose Richard Gere to play you, because I remember seeing a news article about it.
Back then, I wanted Richard Gere. Well, now he could play me today.
Right.
But not back then. Zac Efron is such a great actor. He did such a good job playing Ted Bundy that I forgot that it was Zac Efron. I was going, well, I'll watch it, but it's going to be hard because I know this is Zac Efron, and I'm just going to be seeing Zac Efron. Well, after the first 2 minutes, I totally forgot it was Zac Efron. I was seeing Ted Bundy.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. So, so Zac Efron put together a movie deal and play Vic Feazell while he was DA before you get too old.
There you go.
Yeah. Time marches on, dudes. So anyway, this sweet email from Tamiko. Vic, you are an amazing, strong man. Proud to know there are still people out there with integrity. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry it cost you so much, but it didn't cost you your soul. May God continue to use you for a beacon of light in the middle of darkness. You're like a modern-day knight, spelled with a K.
Yeah.
K-N-I-G-H-T. After watching every episode, I'm convinced that without your willingness to throw it all away to do what's right, those 20 killers that were found would have never been found. That makes you an American hero. I know you feel bad for being persecuted, but so is Jesus. You're in good company.
There you go.
Wow.
That's
Thank
really
you.
sweet.
Thank you, dear. That was so sweet.
And that's one of
Oh, man,
like
that's
50
one of,
that we've received so far.
yeah, well,
I don't
50
know
by
if you're-
last
I don't know
night.
if you're a knight versus a Merlin, though. You're more of a Merlin.
I'd rather be a Merlin. Yeah, I don't want to be.
More of a Merlin
Yeah, I'm
character
more of
to
a
be.
Merlin. Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
I'd rather be over there talking to the lady at the lake
There you go.
and helping King Arthur do his thing. I don't want to be on a horse jousting with anyone anymore. Now, I was a knight back then. I was a warrior. But now I've gone into my wizard era.
More of a Gandalf Merlin character, really.
Yeah. Yeah, Lord of the Rings. I'm sure glad I was able to graduate from high school because I did nothing my senior year except read The Lord of the Rings.
You're serious?
I started with a Hobbit.
Oh, my Lord.
And I'd sit in the back of class. I'd kind of listen to the teacher, but had that inside my textbook, and I was reading The Hobbit.
Classic.
And then I went through all 3 volumes of The Lord of the Rings my senior year of high school.
Unbelievable.
That's why when I applied for college, the registrar looked at my transcript and said, "Well, you didn't hurt yourself in high school much, did you?" I said, "No, ma'am, I guess I didn't."
Wow. Oh, here you are. Here you are today.
Here we are. There was something else. Oh, yeah. I really wish that it would tied it back a little more that Rita Salazar was a McLennan County case. They
Right.
tied it to Williamson County. That's where Frank Key was
Key.
killed. Rita Salazar was who I was talking about when they were dragging me away in handcuffs, and I said, "You know what's going on
Right.
here, and I'll still be proven right."
Right.
Because I already knew about the other murder cases.
The Dorothy Collins.
Dorothy Collins. We knew who did that one. We didn't know who did Rita, and I did not want that to be a closed case. I was not going to let Henry Lucas plead to something that he confessed to shooting her. Otis confessed to shooting her. Plus, they said that
kids were
Becky
in the back.
Powell and Frank Powell were in the car with them. These 2 little kids that were in school the next morning in Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah. No way, And that's what I was talking about. And Tamiko,
Yeah.
she's right. If I had not done that, if I had not called that grand jury together,
Oh, yeah, this thing would have just gone on, Vic.
nothing would have ever happened.
But that was like the turning point of the documentary is you were featured mostly in episode 3. Like you had episode 3. And that totally was, the entire climax of when's this going to end? Boom, episode 3 hits and it's like, oh, here we go. And then it just kind of goes on to the next hill. But I totally agree that it was episode 3, man, where it did show the turning point. The turning point was you digging the heels in.
Now, I got to give credit to Hugh Ainsworth, and I thought Hugh came off really well in the documentary. I love Hugh Ainsworth.
And if you want to hear more about Hugh and more about the Lucas story, we have an entire series we did with Hugh. I think it's 4 episodes on our podcast channel, which goes into way more depth than what you heard in the Netflix documentary.
Uh-huh. Now, he also talks about the Kennedy assassination, and I know there are a lot of conspiracy people that are going to totally disagree with him. I'm one of them. But I still love Hugh. I mean, you don't have to agree with everything with everybody to like them and love them and hang out with them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So that's why I love Lynn Woolley, Yeah. I mean, like, we all balance the boat. It's what makes this country great. Let's quit being mean to each other, Let's just hug.
I just want to hug you. No, what is it? I just want to hold you. That was your line from the movie you made called
Rhinos.
Called Rhinos.
Rhinos, yeah.
Where you played this character called Roger the Rager.
Roger the
That was one of
Rager.
your lines. I just want to hold you.
I just want to hold you.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I don't know if you can even find Rhinos anymore because that was one of the last movies, independent movies shot on film.
That must be
We actually shot that
expensive.
on film.
That's expensive.
was
Film is so
expensive.
expensive.
Yeah, I did that. I made that movie before the IRS came after me. So that's where some of my money went, was making Rhinos, and I made Rage in the Cage and Blood, Sweat, and Teeth.
Right.
And I participated in making Natural Selection, which was later changed to Monster Hunters, starring the late, great David Carradine.
Yes.
Yeah.
In those 2 documentaries you shot, just to back up a little bit, the Rage in the Cage and Blood, Sweat, and Teeth, those 2 were about the early days of like UFC cage fighting.
Exactly.
Before it was a thing.
Before it was a thing. That was back when people were, it was still illegal in some states.
Wow.
Yeah, I went to Macon, Georgia for one of them, and then we went to New Orleans for the other one, and I got to know some of those guys. I went into it planning to do a documentary against it.
Really?
Yes, but after seeing it, meeting these guys, and figuring out that people get hurt more when you get hit with a boxing glove than when you get hit with a bare fist, because that fist can take a lot more, with a boxing glove. I mean, you see a lot of blood and a lot of bleeding in those cage fights,
Right.
but they don't get hurt as bad. And I loved Muhammad Ali.
Sure.
But and I love a lot of our old NFL football players. But you see what's happening to them from getting hit in the head
brain
so
damage.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I really, really wish that have made that more the tipping point, the Rita Salazar case and our grand jury. Because I'm telling you, everybody on that grand jury, with the exception of one person, was a hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. One person was a snitch, and 11 of them were heroes, sitting there listening to all of that.
Right.
And knowing that they may have to indict a Texas Ranger.
Yeah. That's heavy.
That's heavy.
But the
And
documentary did a great job of really adding the heaviness to it.
I think so.
me.
Yeah.
I mean, it
and
was-
congratulations to Robbie and to Taki. I really hope they win some major awards for this. And if you do, I hope they invite me to the ceremony.
There you
I'd
go.
like to be there.
There you go.
I'm a shameless self-promoter. I'll plead guilty to that.
I'll play guilty. Oh, man. Most dangerous place in the world between Vic Feazell and a video camera. Of course, maybe now it's between you and a microphone. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, the thing about that is we come into our recording studio, we close the door. There's nobody else here. So,
We'll band down
so
the hatches.
the space between me and this microphone is pretty safe.
There you go.
Now, the space between this microphone and out there and the people listening, what I say might really tick some people off. But I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
And we've got the documents to support it. We've got the video to support it. If you disagree with me, send me an email. We'll read it.
Yeah.
I got an email yesterday from somebody talking about how Henry Lucas used to frequent a bar down in Temple.
Really?
Yeah, and I wrote back and I said, that's kind of funny because he never did that. I mean, we know where Henry was just about all the time,
Yeah.
and he never did that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Henry Lucas stories out there that are just totally false.
True. Entire books written about Lucas that are false and Tool that are just entirely false. I mean, where are people getting this stuff from? I mean, it's got to be. I mean, they just approach it with no baseline of what reality is.
Well, Colonel Jim Adams and the Rangers, they stuck to the company line that Henry Lee Lucas was a big mass murderer, a serial killer. They had this guy named Mike Cox. Mike Cox is in the documentary.
Yeah, he is.
Mike Cox worked for the Austin American-Statesman, and he was so biased in his reporting in favor of the Rangers and in favor of DPS all the time that the Austin American-Statesman let him go.
Oh no,
They let him go.
he was pretty neutral in the documentary, but he does say his link with Adams. Mm-hmm. He was a
Well, he
good
has
man.
to, because after the Statesman let him go, the very next day, he went to work for Jim Adams.
Oh, is that right?
The very next day. The only difference was before he was working for Jim Adams, and the Austin American-Statesman was paying him.
Right.
Then he was working for Jim Adams, and the state of Texas was paying him.
Great.
And he's the one who wrote that god-awful book. What's it called?
I don't know.
I don't know, but you and I are going to be talking about it tomorrow night.
Oh, that's the book we're talking
That's
about?
the book. And I haven't read it in 30 years, but I'm going to go to that book club and tell them every damn thing in this book is a lie.
Wow.
It is a lie. And it was partly, well, it just kind of parrots what was in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Really?
Yeah, we fricasseed them, we barbecued
Yeah.
them, and it makes Boutwell and Prince and all those guys just look like,
Knights of the Round Table.
Knights of the Round Table. Yes, it does.
What a trip. I thought it was a cool documentary, Vic. I think they did a good job.
I did too.
I think they told the story. All the feedback is it's pretty incredible to hear what people have to say now that they finally see the story. But here's the big thing. They leave it exposing the hoax.
Mm-hmm.
They say, great, 20 murders have been solved. But what about the rest of them?
What about
and
the rest
that's where
of
it leaves it is, all right, who's going to reopen these? What's going to happen? So what do you think? What do you think the answer is?
I don't know. But in one of the articles I read, it had a really good phrase.
Okay.
And I said, yeah, they've caught 20 of them, but what about the rest of them?
Right.
Some of them, there might have been some murderers actually watching this documentary.
Ooh, what a creepy feeling. Whoa. But you know what? I guarantee you're right.
Yes, yes.
I bet they're
And
going, ruh-roh.
in my deep, 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 deep heart of hearts, I hope Frida Powell saw that documentary. I'm just not willing to give that up yet. Phil Ryan convinced me because there are too many holes in that report. Now, I want to believe you. I really do. But there are so many holes in that report. And I trust Dr. Gilliland, but, that superimposition, the photo over the photo of the skull and all that, that's kind of...
It's a little shaky.
That's shaky. That's quasi-science. And then there's the cognitive bias, too, and the workload.
Yeah.
So there's just still a lot wrong with that case, and I just do not believe that Henry killed Kate Rich. I'm not gonna give him that.
That's right.
I've wishy-washed on that one. I go back and forth. Could he? Yeah, he might have. Beyond a reasonable doubt, I don't give it to him. No.
Yeah.
Becky, Phil Ryan, I'll still give you that one. And and Phil said on the show, on the documentary, he said, yeah, and I called Vic Feazell and I said, I want this new Frida Powell to testify under oath. And, that's what set off the red flags in my stomach,
So that whole part was true.
That whole part was true. And I told him, I said, here's what I'll do. Let me see what's going on. And when I found it out and I called him back, I said, look, I'm going to call a press conference and I'm going to go puppy belly up.
Yeah.
I'm going to say I was wrong about that she duped me. She then duped Hugh, and Hugh had actually been to that house.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And I said, I'll do all that, but I want a commitment from you. And I don't know why I did this. I don't. I said, but don't file charges on her. Just let her go home and forget it.
Okay.
And even though she had lied to me, even though she had cheated me, even though Henry had lied to me, I just didn't want to see her prosecuted or go to jail or anything like that because she wasn't mentally stable. She couldn't have been mentally stable to pass a polygraph about it all.
Yeah, man.
She had to have really, in a way, talked herself into believing she was Becky.
Yeah.
And then they showed that Skype interview with her.
Yeah.
Lighting her cigarette.
You got the cigarette going.
It was kind of sad. And I think her life outside of jail was probably worse than it would have been inside of jail.
Yeah, maybe.
So thanks, Phil Ryan, for keeping your word on that.
Yeah. Do me a kindness. So what do you think? As a whole, give me your feedback.
I'm very pleased.
Excellent.
I hope our listeners are pleased with the docuseries.
Yeah.
But not quite satisfied, because that'll keep them coming back to us.
There you go.
Because we've got all the material.
Yeah, come listen to the podcast. You'll hear Henry's live confessions and stuff that's never been released to the public before. Period.
Yeah,
we've got it.
And to keep everybody's interest, we're going to start skipping around a little. We're going to start going into United States versus
Yeah, we're going
Feazell.
into more of your story because we've done a lot of the major Lucas cases.
Yeah,
And
we
we'll
still
continue
need to
do 'em.
circle back around to Deborah Sue Williamson.
I agree.
I want to interview Liz Flatt, her sister.
Yes.
There's now a lawyer out in Lubbock who's going to be helping. Jerry Ward
That's awesome.
is going to see what she can do to locate those fingernail clippings.
That's awesome.
Because if we can find those clippings, if by some chance they haven't been destroyed,
Yeah.
they'll have DNA on them.
DNA right on them.
Because there was evidence of a struggle.
Right.
And so that alone could solve this case that Bob and Joyce Lemons worked their lives trying to solve.
Yeah.
They came and testified before my grand jury. They came to every fundraiser I ever had. They even came to some of my trial when I was on trial.
Wow.
They were such sweet people. I love them and I miss them.
They deserve answers, man.
They do. So we're going to circle back around to Deborah Sue Williamson's case.
Cool.
And then, but we're going to be getting more into U.S. v. Feazell.
Yes.
We've got a timeline that my legal assistant back then in the late 80s, early 90s put together. His name was Alan McCutcheon. Alan had been a reporter for a radio station here in Waco.
Oh, cool.
And I hired Alan to be my legal assistant to work just on Feazell versus Belo.
Oh, wow.
And so he did this wonderful timeline, and it's date by date by date and everything that happened. So we're going to look at that timeline. We're going to work on the timeline some. I loved Alan. I gave Alan, once we said, oh, that's something else that happened to some of my money. Once we
Give it to Alan.
Once we settled Belo,
Yeah.
I gave Alan a big bonus.
Cool.
A big bonus. I don't mean $5,000 or $10,000. I'm talking about $250,000.
Woo!
Yeah.
Deep six figs.
And he left Waco. He moved to Austin. He was so happy. He was getting his life going great. He bought himself a Lincoln.
There you go.
And then he got diagnosed with brain cancer.
No.
Yes. And less than 4 months later,
That's so sad.
Alan was dead.
That's so sad.
I know. I visited Alan in the hospital. I remember I was fortunate enough to get to see him the day before he died. Because I'd been going to the hospital to see him. But I went up there the day before he died, and he looked different. He was just bones.
Yeah.
It was so sad. And I loved Alan.
Yeah.
And Alan died the next day.
Did he have any of his mind left, or was that?
Oh, no, he had his mind.
Really?
Yeah, he had brain cancer. It had grown, and the way he found it, he had this knot on his neck that was bothering him. He thought he had a cyst or something.
Right.
And he went in to have this little knot looked at. And they said, oh, man, that's a tumor, and it's wrapped all through your brain.
Wow.
Yeah. But when I walked into his hospital room the day before he died, he was awake, and he looked up at me, and he smiled, and he says, Vic,
Yeah.
Vic. And I went over, and I held his hand, and he couldn't talk with me, but we just stood there and held hands for a while.
God.
I kissed him on the head, and I left, and I got the call the next day.
That's so sad, Vic. Good.
But he was a wonderful guy. I'm not sure we could have won the Belo case without him, because there was so much information we had by then. I'd already been found not guilty, see? So we had started all of our discovery process on Vic Feazell versus Channel 8 versus Belo. So we were getting this tons and tons and tons of documents in from the FBI and from the DPS. Mm-hmm. We had to fight them for it, man.
Oh,
we
I
had
bet
to
you did.
Totally fight them.
There's no way they were giving that up with these.
And when we got it back, there'd be all these big black marks.
Redacted. And,
but like I said before, the DPS redacted some stuff that the FBI didn't, and the FBI redacted stuff that the DPS didn't.
nice.
On the exact same document.
Wow.
So, I mean, what are their guidelines? What are their guidelines when they're going to do that? So we were able to compare the documents and sometimes get a really good idea of things,
That's funny.
And so, yeah. And so he put all that together. He figured out what all those documents were saying. He typed it all out for us.
So we have a killer outline to go by.
Killer outline. Thank you, Alan. I miss you. I love you.
So that's what's coming next. U.S. versus Victor Fred Feazell.
Yes, and we'll go some through the timeline, and then we're going to go through what was called the monster motion.
Yeah.
We filed a really, really thick motion early on, a motion to dismiss because of prosecutorial misconduct.
Right.
The main lawyer on that was a really good criminal defense lawyer up in Fort Worth named Jeff Kearney.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jeff is still practicing, but if you ever need a lawyer, Google Jeff Kearney. He grew up in Waco and then moved to Fort Worth and became a really famous criminal defense lawyer in Fort Worth. I mean, everybody in Fort Worth knew Jeff Kearney.
Cool.
And so if you need a good criminal defense lawyer in Fort Worth, Jeff Kearney. But he wrote this motion to dismiss along with me and Gary Richardson. I remember one night we stayed in Jeff's office until we worked all night long. I mean, the sun was coming up before we all left to go home because we were on a deadline and had to get it filed.
Right.
Yeah. And it's got all kinds of affidavits attached from people telling about what the FBI and the DPS had done to them to twist their arms to try to get them to lie. We don't care what you say. We don't care if it's true. Just tell us something. That's what they were saying.
Yeah.
And I got to say, that was not Jack Friels. That was not the guy that prosecuted.
Well, Jack Friels, he was just handed the case last minute, right?
At the last minute. He was given that case maybe a month before trial.
Wow.
Because Jan Patterson, they basically they took her off the case.
Right.
And when they took her off the case, she got all pissy and mad and resigned.
Huh.
But she did some really terrible things that we're going to bring out. I mean, she committed perjury before a federal grand jury. And we have the documents to prove it. And I've said before, if you don't like what we say about you, you should have behaved better.
You should have done what was right, plain and simple.
Yeah. That's the theme of my speech out in Laguna, is do what's right. Yeah. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Love you, Jonathan.
Love you back, man.
Thanks for watching that with me Friday.
Hey, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the barbecue. Thanks for the laughs. Whenever the Ranger said something, we just look at each other and do that like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I know.
Come on.
I know.
Come on.
They did give us a few lines I love, though, and I'm going to use them.
They did.
I love you, John. Thank you for your help all these years, man. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And for our listeners, watch the documentary if you haven't seen it yet.
Watch it.
Confession Killer. And if you have more questions about episodes and whatnot, email us promo@withvic.com. And make sure to go to www.vicfeazell.com to check out our Lucas database and check the archives to see all these sweet documents we have.
Yeah, and you journalists out there, watch the documentary, write something about it, and say something good about Robert Kinner and Taki Odom, because those guys deserve Emmys.
Yes.
They do.
That'd be cool.
So,
fair enough.
Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition.
Oh, one last thing. We do have T-shirts on the website now. We have Vic Feazell Show podcast T-shirts.
Wow.
So go get one. We have a couple different colors. We have the sweet orange, and we have some in I believe, black. They look awesome.
Wow. I'm so excited.
And some other ones are coming, too. Ones with the handcuffs. We have some of those coming, but they're not up quite yet.
No, and then in about a month, we'll have the coffee, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
I can't wait.
The coffee's great because it's roasted by Pinewood Roasters right here in
Just
Waco.
fresh and delicious.
Fresh and delicious. And you'll love the labels because Jonathan Zimick, the artist, has been instrumental in designing these things and working with the people that are helping us design them. All his comic book connections.
There you go.
And it'll be fun.
It'll be fun.
Sip your DA blend coffee. The DA blend. This is really bad coffee. But it's
actually
not.
really
It's
good.
The DA's office coffee back in the 80s, though, that was bad.
That was just like no name brand coffee.
Oh, man.
Just made for volume versus quality.
We bought the cheapest we could get, and sometimes it would be so thick you could stand a fork up in it.
That's disgusting.
It was.
That is nasty.
It was. And if you notice the documentary, a lot of those pictures have
You always had that cup of coffee. You always had that coffee in your hand. You weren't joking about that.
No, I wasn't. Yeah, I should have given up the coffee, and maybe I wouldn't have been so
inflammatory.
With your
statements.
That's a good word. Hi, I'm Vic Feazell. During these trying times, you might want to just stay home. And at the law offices of Vic Feazell, we understand. That's why we're set up to handle your personal injury claim without you even having to come in. Just give us a call, and we'll take it from there. We can send any paperwork straight to your smartphone or computer. Don't delay, because if we don't put money in your pocket, you don't owe us anything. I'm Vic Feazell.